Lena was a quiet force at the corporate firm, known for her diligent work in the finance department. In her late 20s, she had already built a reputation for being reliable, intelligent, and exceptionally good at her job, but no one noticed. She wasn't one to seek attention or accolades. Lena preferred to stay out of the spotlight, content with simply doing her work to the best of her ability. While her colleagues engaged in casual chats and formed close-knit social circles, Lena kept to herself, focusing on the tasks at hand. Every morning she arrived early, ensuring everything in the office ran smoothly. She managed schedules, organized meetings, and kept the financial records in perfect order. Yet, despite her competence, she was often overlooked by everyone around her. Her boss, Mr. Wallace, a prideful man in his 50s, barely acknowledged her existence beyond the work she did. To him, she was just an assistant, nothing more. He'd often dismiss her with a wave of his hand, muttering that she was simply there to fill in the gaps and keep things moving, as if she didn't play a critical role in the office's operations. The other employees followed his lead, treating her as invisible. They didn't see the sharp mind behind her reserved demeanor, nor the determination that kept her working long hours while they played their office politics. To them, she was just another assistant, no more no less. Lena never spoke up about it. She wasn't seeking validation or recognition, and perhaps, deep down, that's what made her so easily forgotten. But little did they know, Lena's quiet presence was about to make waves in a way no one could have predicted. One crisp morning, as Lena settled into her desk, a soft buzz from her phone interrupted the usual calm of the office. It was an email from Mr. Wallace's secretary, asking her to come to his office immediately. A chill ran through her as she wondered what was going on. She had no prior warning, no hint of trouble. She'd been working tirelessly, just as always. When she arrived at Mr. Wallace's office, the door was slightly ajar. She knocked softly before entering, her heart pounding in her chest. He sat at his desk, his back turned to her, staring out the large window as though lost in thought. Without even turning to face her, he spoke in a cold, detached tone. "Lena, sit down, we need to talk." The words hit her like a sudden gust of cold air. She hesitated for a moment before taking a seat in front of him. She couldn't fathom what was happening. She'd been doing her job, better than most, and had never received any indication that her position was at risk. Wallace finally turned around, his face hardening. "Lena, we've been evaluating our team's performance, and I've come to a decision. The company needs more than just people who can handle the basics. We need individuals with leadership qualities, with vision, people who matter." Lena's chest tightened, her mind raced, trying to understand what he meant. Leadership, she wasn't applying for leadership, she didn't want to be in the spotlight. She just wanted to do her work. "I've decided," Wallace continued, his voice unyielding, "that we're letting you go. You're just not leadership material. We need people who can take the company forward, and frankly, you're not the right fit." Lena was stunned, her breath caught in her throat. She could hardly process his words. She'd been let go, fired. Just like that. She opened her mouth to say something, but the words wouldn't come. All she could do was stare at him, utterly humiliated. Wallace leaned back in his chair, clearly pleased with his decision. "You'll collect your things and leave today. You're just not someone who matters here. I'm sure you'll be forgotten by tomorrow." The words stung more than she expected. Lena stood up, her legs shaky, and without another word, she gathered her things, her hands trembling. As she walked out of his office, she heard the quiet whispers of her co-workers behind her. She had been fired, and no one even cared. The final sting came when Wallace's voice rang out from his office, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She's a nobody, she'll be forgotten by tomorrow." And in that moment, Lena knew her time in that place had come to an end. But little did anyone know, this would be the last they'd see of the nobody. A few days after Lena's quiet departure, the office buzzed with whispers, but this time, the rumors had nothing to do with her. There was a new storm on the horizon, a much larger one. Word spread quickly that the company's parent firm had been acquired by a powerful tech corporation. The news hit like a thunderclap, leaving employees scrambling for answers. Meetings were held behind closed doors, and the air seemed thicker with tension each passing day. The restructuring process was underway, and no one knew who would be left standing in the end. Executives were being replaced, departments were shifting, and positions that had once seemed secure were now on the chopping block. For the first time in years, there was a real sense of fear in the office. Lena didn't pay much attention to the chaos, she had moved on. After a few interviews, she found herself in a new job, one where her hard work was appreciated, and where her contributions were valued. But her former colleagues were still glued to their desks, uncertain about their future. Then one morning, the inevitable happened. Mr. Wallace, the proud man who had once looked down on Lena as a nobody, was summoned into a meeting with the new executives from the tech firm. Rumors swirled that he was being replaced, no surprise to anyone who knew how out of touch he had become with the company's changing needs. But the details were murky. The new management wasn't interested in explanations or apologies. They were focused on efficiency and innovation, qualities Wallace had never truly embraced. Within hours the news spread, Wallace was let go. His firing came without the usual fanfare, no press release or farewell party, just a swift and cold termination. His tenure, marked by pride and arrogance, ended abruptly. And with it the man who had once been at the top of the food chain now found himself without a job, without a network, and without the support of the very company he had built his career on. Wallace, a man who had spent his life climbing the corporate ladder, suddenly found himself at the bottom. His connections, which had once seemed so strong, evaporated the moment the tech firm took over. No one from his old circle returned his calls, no one reached out to offer a helping hand. The truth was clear, he was on his own. And as the days passed, Wallace began to realize the painful truth: no one was going to save him. While Wallace's world crumbled around him, Lena's life took an unexpected turn. In the weeks following her dismissal, the corporate world was swept by the changes brought on by the acquisition. The new tech corporation had plans that reached far beyond just reorganizing the company. It aimed to revolutionize it from the ground up. And at the heart of those plans was Lena, though no one could have guessed it. Lena had always kept her family background a secret. She'd worked hard to create her own identity, far removed from the expectations that came with being the daughter of one of the tech industry's most influential CEOs. Her father, Victor Hargrove, was the head of the very tech corporation that had acquired her old company. But Lena had never wanted to trade on her last name. Instead, she worked tirelessly in a position that most would have dismissed, putting in long hours without any special treatment or recognition. Her father had always admired her for her determination to make her own way. He had insisted that she learn the value of hard work, free from the privileges that came with being born into wealth. But that didn't mean he was blind to her potential. Over the years he had been watching her grow, taking note of her sharp mind, her unwavering loyalty, and her grace in the face of adversity. Lena had always remained humble, even when she was mistreated by colleagues who saw her as nothing more than a quiet assistant. Her father had often quietly hoped that one day, she would rise to the challenge and show the world what she was truly capable of. As the dust settled from the merger, the new leadership team, including her father, recognized her exceptional qualities. They had seen the way she handled herself through the tough restructuring period, the way she had been dismissed without flinching, and how she never once let the bitterness of her situation affect her work. Lena's quiet strength had not gone unnoticed, and the board was impressed by her loyalty and grace. In an unexpected move, the board appointed Lena as the regional director for the newly merged company. It was a position that would put her in charge of overseeing multiple departments, guiding the company into its next phase of growth. It was a role that came with significant authority and responsibility, far beyond the role she had left behind. But Lena wasn't the type to rush in with arrogance. She took the position with humility, determined to prove herself in this new chapter of her life. The day she walked back into the company's headquarters, the building felt different. It had once been a place of humiliation and isolation, where she was dismissed as just an assistant. But now, as she entered the same lobby, she felt a sense of empowerment. She walked through the halls with a quiet confidence that was impossible to ignore. The same employees who had once whispered behind her back now watched her with a mix of awe and disbelief. They couldn't believe it. Lena, the quiet assistant they had all but forgotten, was now in charge. And they couldn't deny it. She had earned every bit of respect she was about to receive. Lena didn't gloat or seek revenge for the way she'd been treated. Instead, she moved forward with purpose, ready to lead with the wisdom she had gained from the very struggles that had once held her back. The company was changing, and so was she. But this time everyone would know her name. Weeks passed, and Wallace's situation only grew more desperate. The high-powered corporate world he had once dominated was now closed to him, his connections and reputation shattered. He spent his days scrolling through job boards and making phone calls that led nowhere. His name carried no weight anymore, and without the backing of his former company, he was just another man looking for work. Finally, after days of fruitless searching, Wallace reluctantly decided to attend a job fair. He had no choice. The invitation came from a recruiter he had known for years, one who had once admired his career. But now, in the wake of his dismissal, Wallace could barely bring himself to show up. His ego, bruised and broken, made each step to the event feel like a personal failure. At the fair, he wandered through booths filled with eager candidates and young professionals. It was a strange feeling, being on the other side of things, facing the same long lines and hopeful faces he had once looked down on. He knew no one would be eager to hire him now, but what else could he do? The bills piled up, and the reality of his situation sank in with each passing minute. And then, as he turned a corner in the crowded hall, his eyes landed on something that took his breath away. There at the booth for the newly merged company, stood Lena. It took a moment for Wallace to fully process the sight. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected her to be here, in such a prominent position, looking every bit the professional leader she had now become. The same quiet assistant he had fired, she was now representing the very company that had taken over his world. She stood tall, confidently speaking with a young professional, her demeanor calm and authoritative. Wallace froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He had no idea how to approach her. A rush of shame flooded his thoughts, and for the first time in years he felt small. He had humiliated her, discarded her without a second thought, and now here she was, in charge, holding the future he had once so arrogantly believed was his alone. He hesitated, but the desperation in his eyes overcame the pride he had once worn like armor. Slowly he walked up to her booth. Lena's gaze lifted as he approached. For a moment she didn't recognize him, but then it clicked, the same arrogant man who had fired her without a second thought. Now, he was standing before her, his shoulders slumped, his face betraying the shame he couldn't hide. "Miss Hargrove," Wallace began, his voice quieter than he ever imagined it would be. "I need a job, anything. Please." The words, so simple and humbling, hung in the air. He had completely shed the arrogance he once wore like a crown, replaced now by a man who, for the first time, truly understood what it meant to be overlooked, to be discarded. The tables had turned, and he was no longer the one calling the shots. This time, it was Lena who had the power. Lena listened patiently as Wallace spoke, his words trembling with vulnerability. It wasn't the proud, arrogant man who had once dismissed her without a second thought. No, the man standing before her was different, humble, broken and desperate. She could see it in his eyes, the shame that weighed him down. His pride, once so evident, had vanished, replaced by a quiet humility. But Lena did not gloat. She did not let a single trace of triumph show on her face. She had learned long ago that the true measure of a person wasn't in how high they climbed, but in how they treated others along the way. She had no intention of humiliating Wallace, even after everything he had done to her. She had been through enough hardship herself to understand that everyone deserved a second chance. "Mr. Wallace," she began softly, her tone measured, yet firm. "I won't pretend that everything's forgotten. What you did to me was wrong, and you hurt me. But I believe people can change, and everyone deserves an opportunity to start over. We all make mistakes." Wallace's eyes flickered with a mix of relief and apprehension. He had come to her seeking mercy, but he knew this wasn't going to be an easy road. He had fallen from grace, and he wasn't foolish enough to think he could walk back into the corporate world at the same level he had once occupied. Lena took a deep breath, then continued. "I'm offering you a position here, but it's going to be at a much lower level than what you had before. You'll start from the ground up, just like I did. It won't be easy, and it won't be glamorous. but if you're willing to put in the work, to prove that you can be humble and respectful, I'm willing to give you the chance." Wallace looked at her, the weight of the situation settling in. He had once seen himself as untouchable, but now, he could barely meet her gaze. His pride was gone, and in its place was the understanding that Lena was offering him not just a job, but a way to rebuild his life from the ground up. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was a chance. And in that moment, he knew that it was more than he deserved. "I accept," he said, his voice quiet but steady. The words were hard to say, but the gratitude behind them was undeniable. He wasn't sure if he could ever fully make up for what he had done, but he knew that this was his chance to try. Lena nodded, offering him a slight smile. "I'm glad. Remember, respect has to be earned, Mr. Wallace. Not just from others, but from yourself too." With that, he turned and walked away, the weight of his new role settling on his shoulders. Lena watched him for a moment, feeling a strange sense of closure. She didn't wish him ill, but she also knew that his journey had just begun. As he disappeared into the crowd, she reflected on how life had a way of coming full circle. People often rose and fell, sometimes through their own choices, sometimes because of circumstances beyond their control. Lena had learned the hard way that life wasn't about status or titles. It was about how people treated others, especially when no one was watching. The way someone carried themselves through adversity, the kindness they showed, and the humility they practiced, that was what truly mattered. Lena had worked hard to get where she was, and she hadn't let bitterness or pride cloud her judgment. She had learned that kindness, humility and second chances were what made a true leader. She had been judged once, unfairly, by her status, but now, she was in a position to show that no one, no matter how high or low, should ever be defined by their status. Everyone deserved a chance to grow, to learn, and to be better. And sometimes that was the most powerful thing a person could offer. As the job fair buzzed around her, Lena felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that she had given Wallace a chance to rebuild, just as she had once been given the chance to rise. In the end, it wasn't about where they had started, it was about where they chose to go from here. Thank you for watching this incredible journey of redemption, humility and second chances. Lena's story is a powerful reminder that no matter where you start, your character and how you treat others truly define who you are. It's never too late to change, to grow, and to give someone the chance they deserve. If this story inspired you, don't forget to hit that like button, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories that remind us of the strength and kindness and humility. And if you know someone who would appreciate this message, share this video with them. Together, let's spread the power of compassion and second chances. Thanks for being a part of this story. Until next time.